Oh, you're gonna get in between me and the camera, are you? As usual. You're a meathead. Now get out of my way. Back up, please, dear. Thank you. Good girl. Hey, welcome back, folks. Glad you could be with me today. What I want to talk about today, well, it was actually supposed to be included in my last video, but man, that thing was just a bit of a disaster from word go. Actually took 4 days to complete that one, multiple technical difficulties. Anyhow, I wanted to talk about why I don't lunge. And actually near the end of my last video, I even said that's why I don't lunge, but I didn't realize that by that time I had forgotten I hadn't told you why I don't lunge. Well, if this big fatso here would get out of my way, we'll talk about that. See, I believe there are primarily 3 reasons that people lunge. 4, I guess, because the 4th one would be some people just do it because they think they're supposed to do it. They have no idea why they're doing it. They saw somebody else doing it, thought that's the cool thing to do, so they do it. Well, I don't worry too much about those ones because I figure once they learn a little bit more, they'll stop doing it. They'll find something else to replace it. That's not a problem. So we don't concern ourselves with those. We'll just concern ourselves with the other 3. Now, I believe there's primarily 3 reasons. There might be a few others that people have, I don't know. But that I know of, there's basically 3 main reasons that people lunge their horses. And the first one is the one that I dislike the most, is they do it for punishment. If they're out on a ride or even in the arena and the horse acts up a bit, well, when they're done, it's like, I'm going to show them who's boss, I'm going to teach them some manners, I'm going to lunge them, I'm going to round pen them, whatever, because lunging can be done either on a lunge line or in a round pen, okay? And that either one would be considered lunging, even though you're not using a lunge line in a round pen. But some people call it round penning, and when you use a line, they call it lunging, but it's really the same thing. You're making the horse run around in circles, and in the case of punishment, man, silly, accomplishes nothing. Okay, first off, by the time you get the tack off and hook your lunge line on or take it to the round pen, that horse has absolutely no idea why it's there or what's going on. All it knows, because horses are very sensitive, is the horse senses angry emotions, which anger is an emotion that should absolutely never, ever be around a horse in the first place. But that horse picks up on it because you wouldn't be punishing it if you weren't angry, because that's what people do, and that's, well, one of the reasons punishment doesn't work. It's an angry emotion that often misplaced and can get out of hand real fast. But the horse has absolutely no idea. Now, if the horse is misbehaving for whatever reason, somehow, some way, it's not doing what you want, that's not the horse's fault in the first place. You're actually punishing the wrong person because it's your fault. Because you didn't teach the horse what it needed to know to be able to behave properly, or you didn't cue it properly. I don't know, either one could be the issue. Or, that's pretty much it. You're not teaching the horse nothing. Actually, the horse will learn one thing. She always keeps doing that to her and Clamp. Those are 2 worst for that. Always got to get between me and the camera. But the horse will only learn one thing. It's not going to learn anything from the punishment when it comes to the behavior, because by the time you're punishing it, it has no idea why. All it knows is you're angry and you're making it work its ass off. And the only thing it really learns from that is you're a jerk. That's all it learns. It just harms the relationship you have with your horse. The other thing that it can do, the other problem that it can create, aside from the fact that doing this punishment stuff absolutely does not solve anything or doesn't fix any problems, doesn't help in any way, shape, or form. The other problem that can occur is horses, the way their mentality works, they visually connect images with emotions. And if every time you lunge that horse or round pen it, you're angry and you're making it work, Very soon, what's going to happen is when that horse sees the lunge line or the round pen, you're going to have problems because it's going to say, I'm out of here. I don't want nothing to do with that stuff, okay? So that's the one that I dislike the most. As a Family Guy would say, it really grinds my gears. Discipline. Lunging for discipline. Absolutely unacceptable in my book. You cannot justify it in any way, shape, or form. I don't care how you do it. You can try all you want, but you'll never justify it to me. So, lunging for discipline, that's the main reason. And completely unacceptable. That one gets my blood boiling just thinking about it. Now, the second reason that is quite common for lunging a horse, and almost as silly, although it's sort of effective in a way, I'll explain how it works, is people that have particularly hot horse, and they think that it needs to be lunged before it's ridden. And this is still a very, very common belief amongst people that you do this sort of thing. I can think of one guy in particular that a very experienced horseman and a trainer, and he still thinks there are some horses that have to be lunged. And not too long ago, I actually was present when a trainer, I should rephrase that, a so-called trainer, told his client, at which point I had to walk away because they're not paying me for my advice, but I heard a trainer tell his client, lunge him till he sweats. That was the advice given because they were having problems with the horse. And that was their solution. Well, let me explain how this works. It appears to work because what happens is you will actually have less problems with the horse, but not because you're fixing anything. All that's really happening is you're just wearing them down physically. Mentally, the horse still wants to argue with you and give you a hard time. And, well, it doesn't want to give you a hard time, but it is still mentally in the state where it's going to want to argue with you. It's going to be difficult. It's not going to be a pleasant ride. But what has happened by lunging it is you have worn it down physically enough that it's just simply too tired to argue with you. That's all. That's all you've accomplished. You have never addressed the problem because the problem is actually a mental one. That horse wants to argue with you, and that part never goes away. It's just simply too tired. It's like, oh, forget it. We'll just do whatever you want. That's really what it comes down to. And you know, the other part of that that's really kind of silly too is that, you know, for example, you go out on a trail ride with your friends. You know, you lunge your horse before you go out. All fine and dandy, horse is behaving now. And say an hour down the road or whatever, you guys all decide to take a break under a nice shade tree. A little refreshing break, just watch nature go by. Kind of a nice thing to do. I mean, hey, that's what horses are for, eh? Take them out in the country and enjoy the scenery. Anyhow, a little while later, you're all refreshed and it's like, okay, let's journey on now. You all go get back on your horses, but you're like, whoa, wait a minute. I got to lunge my horse before we leave. Because in the time that you got refreshed under that shade tree, so did your horse. And now you're right back to where you started before you lunged your horse in the first place. So unless you carry a lunge line with you and a lunge whip, you're not going to be able to address the problem. You're not going to be able to do anything about it. And on top of that, your friends are all going to have to wait for you while you lunge your horse before you can continue your ride. So lunging a horse to take the edge off, or lunging a hot horse, I did a video years ago. I'll probably do another one explaining what a hot horse actually is. A hot horse has got nothing to do with breed. It's got to do with training, and generally inadequate training. That's what creates a hot horse. Hot by breed. There are a few breeds that are hot-blooded. It has nothing to do with behavior. It has to do with the blood's ability to carry oxygen to the muscles, which gives them more endurance. And the Arabians are famous for being hot-blooded, or only the mistake people make is they refer to them as hot horses. They're not. They have some of the most wonderful temperaments, if that's your expectation when you're raising them. Okay, never mind, enough of that. I could do a video on that one. I have actually in the past. Okay, so there she goes again. Get that big butt out of here. Okay, so first reason, discipline. I want to choke people that do that. The second reason that people lunge, they want to take the edge off their horse because they got a hot horse. Well, that doesn't work very well either, and I just explained how it works. Is you're not actually fixing a problem. It may look like it because the horse is okay when you ride it, but you're not actually fixing the problem. You're just, it's a Band-Aid on a symptom kind of thing, because you tire the horse out enough that it won't argue with you. That's all you're doing. You're not fixing the problem. And you'll probably, if you resort to something like that, you're probably always going to have to do it. That's one of the problems with doing things like that, is you're not actually fixing the problem. The problem never ever goes away. So you keep having to put a fresh Band-Aid on the wound every single time because you've never solved the injury, problem, whatever. I'm trying to sound fancy here. Anyhow, third reason, and now this is the only one that occasionally, very, very rare occasions, can be sort of legit, and that's why this horse is in here. I'm going to get to her in a minute, because you know she's a little fat. But the reason number three is people lunge their horses is for exercise. Now, I should probably start with, the problem with doing that is it really limits the muscles that you can exercise in the horse. And if you're involved in a particular type of discipline that requires certain muscle groups more than others, you should probably consult someone that's a specialty, and they could probably recommend some exercises that would target the muscle groups that you want to enhance for the discipline that you're involved in. And well, there's another reason that lunging isn't real good for this is simply because most of those exercises you will find are going to be ridden ones, not lunging. And personally, I find lunging just horribly boring, both for me and the horse. But let me go on a little more about the exercising one, is if you actually think you need to exercise the horse because it's not getting enough exercise or activity or whatever, well, that only happens if the horse is kept in a very small paddock or a box stall. Is the only time it's getting inadequate exercise, and lunging it even twice a day is not going to work because horses need constant movement. It keeps them physically and mentally healthy to move. They must move. And there was a study done at Pennsylvania University, Bolton Center Vet Clinic, and this lady there that she did a lecture that I attended, and her specialty is actually reproduction, but they have this herd of semi-feral horses on a small area of about only 40 acres. To me, that's small. Some of you probably think that's a pretty good size. We got about 70 acres out here, but they got this 40 acres that the university was good enough to give to them for the purpose of doing research. So they got this herd of semi-feral horses on that they want to see what horses naturally do. One of the things that they wanted to check out was to see how much they moved. And it was really interesting because I always knew horses moved a lot, but I didn't realize just how much, because the average, and this is only on 40 acres, okay? They're limited to 40 acres they can move around on. And those horses, I believe the numbers were fairly accurate because they did everything from visual tracking to pedometers, GPS tracking, all kinds of stuff. They really went out of their way to try and get as much accuracy as possible. And it turned out that the average horse would travel 40 miles a day on 40 acres. I thought that was quite amazing. The record holder apparently was a mare that had just foaled, and she did 100 miles in one day. That was her record holder. So horses absolutely do need to move. That's something they're going to naturally do. Now, going back to the lunging for exercise thing is, if your horse is out on a pasture where it can move, well, it can potentially move up to 40 miles in a day on its own. Does it need you to exercise it? Not really. Not unless you're involved in a particular discipline where the horse has to be really in top shape. And again, that goes back to talk to somebody in that field. They can recommend some good exercises that will probably involve riding, not lunging. Okay. If you are keeping your horse in a very small paddock or in a box stall or something, and that's why you think you need to lunge it, get it out of there. Reevaluate the housing for that horse, because, like I said, horses need to move. And lunging is not a solution to the problem. They need constant movement throughout the course of the day. Horses are actually awake for, what the heck is it now, 18 hours a day, something like that? I don't know. Long time. Most of the day, anyhow. They don't sleep very much, not like humans. So, and during that time, they have to be continually moving. And, you know, even if you lunged twice a day, that's not going to be adequate. So, if you're keeping your horse in a box stall, get it out of there. Because that is the problem, is the horse can't move, and it needs that for its physical and mental health. The majority of colic cases are horses that are kept in box stalls, things like that. Very easy cure, just change the housing, that's it. And generally pasture board is cheaper too, well, at least around here. I don't know where you live, it may vary a little, because, you know, depending on how much. But anyhow, the reason I got this horse in here is on the subject of exercising. Only on very, 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 very rare occasions will you actually need to give your horse a little additional exercise. And I happen to have one of those rare occasions right here. Now, I do believe that some physical issues that she's got have something to do with she doesn't move as much as she should, and that's why she is fat. She actually does require a little extra exercise, but I want to show you, and this is why I got her in here, is I'm actually going to go through my routine with her. I'm going to throw together a little montage for you with some clips of some of the different things that we do, and my version of lunging, which is not just making the horse run around in circles. And when I do things, there's always an educational element involved where the horse is learning to respond to me, and depending on its level of education, we're teaching it something. And so it's not just run around circles. There's a lot more to it than that. We're going to, you know, speed up, slow down, change directions, come in, go back out, all this stuff. And you're going to get to see this in just a minute. And you'll find out that it does not affect our relationship either. So, and oh, you won't see me go get a lunge line either, because we do this at Liberty. We use the full arena so that she has a little more room to move around, which less confining for the horse. It makes it actually better for the horse, in my opinion. So that's where we're going to start with this one, is no lunge line. And there she goes again. I'll get back to you in a second. Excuse me, dear. No, I said that way. This goes right back to that last video I did where I'm not hitting the horse. There we go. I haven't done this with her in months now. Probably should be doing it more often for the exercise. And so, yeah, we are definitely having some problems here. Not working very good. That's my fault. I haven't been doing it enough. This is just information. Tells me we should be doing this a little more often. That's what this is. It's not her being bad. But as you can see, she's doing what I asked her to do, so I'm leaving her alone, just like the last video. And I wanted her to pick up the pace a little, so I just asked. Good girl. Now, did making her run around in circles affect our relationship? Nope. That's how you do it. She's still a cuddle bug. But, again, I like to always change things up again, so time to change direction. Let's go the other way. Good girl. Oh, keep going. Oh, easy. There we go. And stop. There we go. And as you can see, by doing it this way, it does not hurt our relationship one little bit. She still likes to be with me, still wants to be with me. As soon as we stop and I invite her in, she comes into me, give her a cuddle, tell her she's a good girl. And, well, that's the short version, but you saw what we do. It's basically, it's more of an educational thing where we teach her to respond to our cues. Faster, slower, different directions, that sort of thing. Come into me, go back out, away you go again, all kinds of stuff. And you never do the same thing for any great length of time. We always keep changing things up so that the horse doesn't get bored and it doesn't destroy our relationship that we got, because I actually got a pretty good relationship with this one. Well, actually I got a pretty good relationship with all of them. And well, as you can see, she's following me. She likes me. She's not upset with me because I lunged her. It's because she understands the emotion behind. All horses do, actually. They're very sensitive to your emotions. That's why I said that first one where people lunge for discipline is just a horrible one, because the horses pick up on your anger. And that is the only reason that somebody would ever lunge the horse for discipline, is if they are angry. So I can guarantee that emotion is there, even though I'm not angry. I'm just going to show them who's boss. Well, why are you doing that? Because you're angry. No, don't try and tell me you're not angry. And the horse knows. They're not stupid. Horses are extremely sensitive when it comes to stuff like that. And I don't know how good that actually looked when what I was doing, because where I was at, I don't know how much. From over there, I can't tell how much the camera's even catching. I know it doesn't get the whole width of the arena, unfortunately, and I don't have a cameraman to follow me around. So occasionally, we don't exactly get the best perspective on things. But that's what I wanted to show you. That's my version of lunging. It's not just making the horse run in mindless circles over and over and over that just annoys the horse to the point where it says, you know, I've had enough of this crap. I don't want nothing to do with it. And then when they see the lunge line or the round pen, you have problems, and the horse says, I'm out of here. The next thing you know, you got a bolting runaway horse, and you don't understand why all of a sudden now you got a new problem. Well, you created it. And that's the thing, is a lot of the problems that we actually have, we've created. Many of them. Actually, pretty much all of them. Yep, one way or another. And quite often, we don't mean to. I mean, nobody wants problems, but inadvertently, without even realizing we're doing it, most people actually create problems. It's just, I mean, I've done it myself. Everybody does it. It's not something that's very few, no, pretty much everybody does it. But, you know, fortunately, if you're aware of them, you can fix them. But like I said, you know, that's my version of lunging. It doesn't cause problems. It actually, in her case, gives her a little exercise because this big fat cow needs it. And actually, if you're watching the way she moved, you'll notice it was a little weird. And that is part of the issue. And that's why when we do lunge or two, we have to be a little careful. We can't overdo it. You know, I want her to get a little more exercise, but we don't want to put her in discomfort while we're doing it either. So we're careful about it. And apparently we're not hurting her too much because she's still pretty happy to be with me. So I think we're doing okay. So you have to be careful. But, you know, that's my take on lunging. This one, I said, you know, there is the rare exception. I happen to own one of those rare exceptions that actually needs a little exercise, additional exercise. But I don't do the typical lunging because the typical lunging that most people do actually isn't even all that good for the horse. And if you're not careful and you overdo it, you can kill your horse. I know that sounds a little bit dramatic, but it's a fact. Horses have a very limited endurance. They can't run for hours on end. And if you were to lunge your horse at a canter for half an hour straight, that's probably not good for the horse. And like I say, you overdo it, and it can actually be fatal. And that's not an exaggeration either. Overdoing it can be fatal for the horse, so be careful. But those are the reasons that I don't lunge. I don't like lunging. I will never endorse it, ever. I will never encourage people to do it. I'll never tell people to do it. I will tell people to teach their horse to move and do all the things that this one just did, which is similar to what most people would teach on a lunge line, but I don't even bother using one. And once they know what you want, you don't need one either. The only time I ever put my horses online is if there happen to be other people and other horses in here. And I'm not too worried about my horses, but it makes other people comfortable when you do that sort of thing. So that's what we do. But yeah, I'll never endorse it. I'll never recommend it. I'll never encourage it. And I just gave you 3 good reasons not to do it. Well, fourth one too. Don't do it because you saw someone else do it. That's the worst reason people do things. But that one actually is the easiest to correct because you just leave people alone, and they generally, when they learn a little bit more about what they're doing, they figure out that, well, hey, I don't need to be doing that. Because for the most part, lunging is entirely a waste of time. And a lunge line is a waste of money. I used to own one years ago because I thought I needed one. Seemed like the thing to have. I thought you were supposed to have a lunge line. So I bought one. I very quickly figured out how silly it was and how useless it was. And I so rarely ever used it for anything that eventually I ended up cutting the clip off of the end of it. I threw the rest of it in the garbage, and I believe that clip is now on a chain that is securing a gate somewhere. So that's my opinion of lunge lines. So there you go, folks, my take on lunging and why I don't do it. And I hope that helps and helps you understand why I don't do it, and maybe helps keep you from doing things with your horse that probably are not good for it. Have a good day. Go play with your pony.